Hello friends, check out this sunset. I don't know if you can see it, but it's quite nice. We're here today in the first chapter in 1 Peter. So this is 1 Peter chapter 1. Now a little background from 1 Peter. 1 Peter was written by Peter, pretty much the main apostle. You know, Jesus' right-hand man. If you could ever say that there was one apostle that was kind of like the leader and the spokesperson for all the other apostles, it was Peter. And, you know, he had his faults, but in the end, he was pretty much the boldest apostle out there. And we don't hear from him, you know, in a lot of other places in the New Testament, like as far as his writing. You have to wonder, why? Why is he writing this now? And why don't we have more of his other writings? Now, it's understood that the book of Mark is from the perspective mostly of Peter. So you could say that, you know, we do hear from Peter there, but this and his next book are his only writings, and it's not the same way that Paul is writing. You know, it's a letter, but Paul would write letters to one place. And in the book of Hebrews, they were meant to be letters to be passed around to different places. And that is true of this letter as well. So he's writing to, and it says, you know, all the names of the cities right in the beginning of the chapter. If you notice, most of them are churches in modern day Turkey. But, you know, he's just writing to basically the main churches in the world right now. The way we understand it, that he is writing this from Rome. And to answer the question that I asked earlier, why now? Why is he writing this? And this is the most important and maybe the most interesting fact that I found in my research for this chapter. And that is, it was dangerous for him to be in Jerusalem. However, he is in Rome right now. And when you look at the date and the time of when he wrote this book, it was about the same time that Nero, who was the Roman emperor, set his own city on fire. The city of Rome, set it completely on fire. A third of the city was burnt up, and he blamed it on the Christians, starting persecution not just in the city of Rome, but all over the Roman Empire. And so there's this other exile going on. You know, we know that friends of Paul ended up having to leave Rome because they were Christians there and they just weren't welcome there anymore. So at some point in this chapter, he's talking about the exile. And, you know, I think he's talking about the exile for the Christians from Rome, but he may be talking about his exile from there in Jerusalem. Anyway, so he's talking about basically what's going on. He's really dealing with the fact that he is probably going to die pretty soon. And he's writing this letter to encourage all of the people to stay strong in their faith, because he knows that the persecution is going to get much worse. So that's the purpose of the letter. And so he starts out and he starts talking about the gospel. My favorite sermon that I've ever heard, and I have the kind of job where I can listen to sermons all day at work. Best sermon I ever heard was a sermon about this chapter. It was by Tim Keller, and it was called Gospel-Centered Ministry. I'm going to put a link in the description here. And he does what he calls it is just like a flyover. But the reason he chose this is because he's just laying out the gospel so eloquently here. And Peter was in a uniquely good place to do it, because Peter was an eyewitness to all the things that happened. You know, he knows who Jesus is personally. So in the beginning here, he says, though you have not seen him, you love him. And he's saying, you know, that's great, but the way that they can know him is essentially through Peter and his eyewitness accounts. So this book is meant to be an encouragement through persecution from an eyewitness account. He makes two major points here. And the first one is he's talking about basically how all of the prophets and all of the people who study the prophets from then were studying it, trying to find out who this Messiah was going to be. You know, if you look at the Old Testament, essentially everything is pointing to Jesus. Everything. The whole Bible, from beginning to end, is about Jesus. The reconciliation that we can have through God, or to God through Jesus. We have been given these words from the prophet, and they were not doing it for their own sake, but they were doing it for you. It must have been a thrilling thing to hear that all of time leading up to these days, the days that they are living to right then. And to be honest, it's true for us now. That since then, it has all also been about Jesus, and we are still able to hear about him. And how great is it that for thousands of years, God was pointing us to this person who hadn't been born yet, and he had these prophets that were foreshadowing it. So Peter's first point is, you can trust in the Bible, you can trust in Jesus, because it is evident that God has been building this up for so long. And his second point is that we need to be holy as God is holy. And he's talking about the persecution that he's going through. And he says, you know, we're being refined like, you know, if you understand how refineries work, essentially what they do is they'll take a metal and they'll put it in an oven, and what it does is it burns away all the bad stuff. You can get the good stuff from the bad stuff. And he's saying that's what's happening to us through this persecution that we're going to be going through. And so he's saying you need to endure the persecution, and you need to be holy. You need to be holy because God is holy, and he even said, you will be holy because I'm holy. If you are God's people, if this is your inheritance, you will be holy because I am holy. And so God is purifying his people. And he says, toward the end, he says, so love each other with a pure heart, not of a perishable seed, but an imperishable seed, something that cannot be burned away. He's saying, love each other with a pure heart. And then he goes back to his first point, and he says, you know, because our bodies are like, what does he say? Our bodies are like the grass of the field, and he's saying the grass may wither and the flower may fade, but the word of the Lord will stand forever. And then he says this word that I'm talking about, it's the gospel. It's this gospel that we've been given, this understanding that we can know God through Jesus and we can be saved through Jesus. So the word of the Lord will stand forever. That's talking about how, since it's been going on for so long, since the prophets were all talking about it, it's not just for them. It's for all time, forever, and it will never go away. You know, and here we are 2,000 years later, and we can still have salvation. We can still have a relationship with God through this Jesus that this man was a friend with, that he lived with, he traveled with. He was his right-hand man. And he's saying the grass may fade and the flowers will wither, but the word of the Lord will be here forever. So anyways, that is Peter chapter 1. Have a great day. Bye.